or the area that you're playing in. The pedal board on this organ is just a single octave, and it's also monophonic. In other words, if you try and play two notes at once, only the lowest one plays. Most electronic organs are like that. Only the really good ones are able to play more than one note at once, and really they need to be able to play more than four, because you play with your toe and your heel with both feet. So that's four notes in one go, and if you've got sustain happening, it's got to be able to continue to play the notes that you might have hit as well as the next one until the sustain goes away. Now the pedals on this organ have only got a few choices. If we go back to the 8-foot, that's the piano pitch, but the pedal board is 2 octaves below middle C. If we hit the 16-foot, we get a deeper one. Put them down together. This organ's badly voiced. The 8-foot is much louder than the 16-foot. So if I flick the 16 on and off, you don't hear much of a change. You hear a lot of change if you flick that one. There's a tuba, which doesn't really sound too much like a tuba to me. A bass guitar, which is not much like a bass guitar. And the string bass. Doesn't sound much like a string bass to me, but you know, some of them are only good in combinations. It also has a Celeste effect on the pedals, which won't show up on this sound very much, but one of those. You can't really hear the phasing effect, but you can hear it's changed its tonality. Now there's a volume control for the pedals, so you can adjust how loud the pedals sound against the rest of the instruments. The manuals have a balance control between the two of them, which allows you to decide which one's louder than the other. Not a very good way of doing things. It would have been much better if the upper manual was at a fixed volume and you could adjust the lower manual by itself, because you might want to make one louder than the other for a solo or something, but you don't really want to change one up and one down at the same time. The rest of the organ is controlled by the expression pedal, which is down there by the right foot, and that controls the volume of everything, as well as the master volume control there. I briefly touched on the start. This is the central controller thing called the Orchestral Conductor for a swanky name. What happens is when I press a note on the upper manual or the lower manual, this thing controls which group of voices it speaks to. So if I upper tab voices, it uses those to generate its tones. If I do the orchestral presets, it'll do from these. Very synthesizer sounding effects, and you can combine them together, so you can have a bunch of them on at the same time, almost all of them, except for one or two of those sound generators, which are available for the upper and lower keyboard, but only one at a time. So if you choose it on the other keyboard, it pops off. So if I try and choose the percussive on the lower, it disappears off the upper. I only do one at a time. And this was a neat thing of this organ in its era, which meant you could set up, say, organ tones for the verse, play with synthesizer for the chorus, and flip between the two without sort of taking your hands away from the centre of the console. So what do we have? We have the orchestral presets, which are these rather cheesy synthesizer sounds. Clarinet, which while you can think, yeah, it's an attempt to sound like a clarinet, no clarinet really sounds like that. The accordion's a bit wheezy. Saxophone, well, not much different. Another one of those synthesizer things. Trombone, another synthesizer. Now, one thing I've noticed with these is that with a lot of organ voices, they only sound good on part of the keyboard. So if I pick the clarinet, around middle C to upper C, not too bad. Octave up, not too bad. Not too bad, but some voices you'll find definitely have their favourite sort of place to be played. And it's making a fool of me at the moment, but the general idea is sometimes you've got to pick a voice to where you play, or change octaves when you change voices on the keyboard, so it sounds good. If we go to the percussive voices, we have a rather bad electric piano. Very quick decay. There is no velocity sensitivity. It always plays the same loudness. There's a harpsichord. A vibraphone. It doesn't sound very much like a real vibraphone, but still it's a nice sound. And again, it's one of those ones where this one's a pretty good example of, we hit the sustain. I think it sounds nicer around here than it does over here. Here's what they call an acoustic guitar. And a jazz guitar. Which I don't think sound that much like jazz guitars, and sound a bit like the ice cream van. And then we have the solo synthesizers. Now that's called solo because it only will play one note at a time. That's all it can do, which sounds a bit naff, but then when you play it with other things at the same time, so if I combine the so-called saxophone with the synth brass and play the two together, it's playing one note while the rest can play chords, which gives you a way of enhancing the lead note out of something. Whoops, can't really play with this thing in my hand. But yeah, the solo synthesizer has a bunch of things like a violin. It doesn't really sound like a violin. That's supposed to be a harmonica. There's a trombone, which doesn't sound like a trombone, but they've tried to be cute and give it a bit of a detuning effect where it's not very accurate, and that just sounds out of tune to me rather than nice. Saxophone. I don't think it sounds like a saxophone, but yeah, okay, it's an instrument of some sort. This is supposed to be a trumpet. It doesn't have the strength that I think a trumpet should have. There's a jazz flute. And a whistle, which sounds like the X-Files whistle. And cosmic fuzz. And a synth chopper. If I combine that with something else. Now the solo synthesizer has some other extra bits. Both the this orchestral voices and they have a timbre control. You can, if I put it in the middle and play hand you can make it a bit more mellow or bright. And that one's got a sweep on it, a phasing sweep. I picked something which doesn't. I should put my elbow on the keyboard. Try it on the synthesizer. That can do. What was that? That was a synth chopper. You can pick, say, the saxophone. Whether it's really bitey or mellow. Jazz flute. There's a volume control, so you can adjust how loud this is compared against everything else. You can also go through the Celeste effect. And there's a phaser, which does that sweeping phaser effect. If I pick a different one and make it more obvious. And I put my finger on something I didn't mean to. Tiny camera, nowhere to hold at that, putting your fingers on buttons. It also has a pitch control. God knows why, because you can't do anything useful with it. If I play with it, you can't return it back to the center position without hunting for it. If I put it on with something else, just sounds like somebody's playing a tune on the car horn. It sounds awful. The only way to get it back in tune is to take the phaser off. Different one. Tune it against another voice with all the modulation turned off to get rid of the beat notes. That's the only way you can get it back where it should be. There is no reset. What else do we have? We have organ presets, which is a bunch of buttons here, which gives you 4 different preset sounds. Okay, there's a string ensemble of its era. This sounded quite nice. And there is a variation of it where you can add an octave below at the same time. So that's like playing C and the C below. Sort of warbling, shimmering effect. And there was also a vocal ensemble, which again had a 1 and a 2 option, which gave you just piano pitch as well as adding an octave below. The vocal ensemble sounds a bit weird. Doesn't sound like voices to me, sounds like some sort of warbling reed. I'll put the second one on. It's just playing this plus an octave below at the same time. And that's the upper manual. Now the lower manual has less on it. It had those tabs I've already gone through. With the other one, you've got 8 foot, 4 foot, 2 foot and 1 foot flutes, which are slightly more mellow than the other keyboard. And they've also tried it on a pipe organ trick. On a pipe organ, when you play a rank of pipes, some of them will be over there in the room, some will be over there in the room, some will be over there. And this organ's done the same thing. If I play on the upper keyboard, They're kind of centralised. If I play on the lower keyboard, they seem to come from a slightly different direction. It's really noticeable if you wear headphones. So it's just by the different speakers around the cabinet. There's about 4 speakers in the cabinet. So you've got the flutes, you've got a diapason or diapason, or however you're supposed to say that, I cannot remember, which is a doesn't sound like a real one, but it's got a bit of a th to the flute sound compared to the 8-foot flute, which is very sort of hollow. You can put them on together. And there's a 8-foot horn of some sort. Again, that's one of those voices which doesn't sound good by itself. It's more of a adding to something else. 8-foot string, they call it a cello. And a 4-foot string. So if I put a few of those on together, let's try that. Now this part of the conductor is for the lower keyboard, and that can the tab voices, the percussive presets, which are these. Do it on the other keyboard for Tommy. Those voices can be played on the upper or lower manual. Same as the synthesizer, that can be played by the upper or the lower manual. It's got its own string ensemble with the same business about being able to play an octave below at the same time. And the vocal ensemble, and that's also got the same 1 or 2 voices at the same time effect of playing an octave below on top of what you're playing. And like the other one, you can play combinations of them. And despite having this organ for 20 years, I still don't use that as much as I might have used it, and still don't remember which one to press without looking. Another feature this organ has that a lot of the electronic organs don't have is sort of thing you used to see on harmoniums, a harmonic coupler.